So, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Roma's webinar, the ultimate guide to scoring your ideal auction properties. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Piotr Rusinek, together with Jay Howard from Hammered Property Auctions. Welcome, guys.
Hey
Thank you for
Scott,
having us,
thanks
Scott.
for having us.
It's my pleasure. So just for those who do not, first of all, know a lot about Roma Finance, just a very quick introduction to Roma. So Roma, we've been going for lending for 15 years. We specifically have products that are there to cater for the people that trade from auctions. We do bridging finance, and we also have a product that we created jointly with Piotr and Jay called the revolving credit facility that puts auction buyers in a position of cash rather than having to rely on valuations and a legal process. We effectively provide a 3-year facility, a drawdown facility, secured against people's existing assets in order for them to use the equity in those assets to draw down money almost as cash to complete purchases, and deals can be done within 24 to 48 hours of the request to be able to complete those auction purchase properties. And so Jay and Piotr, it's wonderful to have you here. Is it worth just giving a short introduction about Hammered and each of your backgrounds?
Yes, sure. Jay, do you want to do a quick intro first?
Sure, yes. So I have been in property since 2002, and I have been in auctions since, well, as a buyer and a seller, since about 2006, 2007. And in 2013, I started working for one of London's largest auction companies. Wasn't at the time, but it certainly is now, Auction House London. And then I was headhunted by Auction House UK to do business development. And in that time, I was attending some events that Piotr was putting together whilst I was at Auction House London as a guest speaker on auctions. And then we just started doing more and more things together. We wrote the first book, Before the Hammer Falls. We've since updated it to the second book, which is also Before the Hammer Falls. And we did all of that stuff together. And then we thought, oh, well, this is good fun. Why don't we do a deal? So we did a deal. And then we thought, oh, that seems to be successful. Let's go into business together. And we started doing that, and it's been a raging success ever since.
Fantastic. And Jay?
Hmm. Yeah, my name is Piotr, and I've been in properties
Sorry.
since 2011. Yeah, I've been properties 2011, and like they said, I was client of Auction House London, and actually I bought my first auction property in 2011. I was going to Auction House London events, and I was actually recently looking up some historical videos from the archives from 2011, and it was all good fun. And since then I really got the kind of auction back, and I sort of like, once you buy or sell properties through auction, you kind of get how quickly things can be done comparing to the private treaty market, and that is just such a big attraction for us. I do admire people who spend a year or 2 years tying up deals on the private treaty market, but that's just not us. We like to get things done in 3 to 4 weeks. We like to get things done quickly. We like working with committed buyers, committed sellers, and that's all what auctions have got to offer.
Fantastic. And what are the reasons why you like working with a business like Roma? Let me direct that first of all to Piotr.
hmm Yeah, so basically, like, we like working with people who make transactions easier, and obviously, bridging finance is um, like number one tool for property buyers in auctions. Like, if someone doesn't have cash, or maybe they have assets but they don't have the liquidity to purchase in the auction, like, Roma gives them that liquidity. And just so it's been great working with you guys, so within our auction buyers club, to basically have our members release that capital that they have in unencumbered properties and have money to go. And we kind of work with people to enable them to analyze deals and buy them quickly, but sometimes they've got financial constraints, and obviously companies like yours allow them to buy things quicker. And obviously you guys been sponsor of our YouTube channel, and people have been really kind of getting to know how Roma works, and so far I think things have been working perfectly.
They have, and I think part of the reason for that is the way in which we completely reinvented the entire legal process for bridging finance, so that our lawyers only ask 8 questions in order for a bridging loan to complete, and that is ideally suited to an auction environment. And what we do in part of that process is when someone's buying a property at auction or needs a bridging loan, essentially we share in advance those 8 questions with our customer. And once their lawyer has dealt with those 8 questions, and they're very simple questions because most of the title investigations are completely insured. We don't go and look into the title. We don't need searches. We accept also desktop valuations, and because of the fact that we accept desktop valuations, we've got a very simple legal process. That's how we complete bridging loans extremely quickly. So just moving on, if we can, to the different types of property auctions, and how they sorry, beg your pardon. Sorry, let me just cover, I should say, the things we're going to talk about today. So the first one is the different types of property auctions and how they work. How to conduct effectively due diligence on properties you're looking to buy at auction, and how you do the research before going into the auction itself. The different ways in which you can bid for properties to increase your chances of success, and then finally, what to expect after winning an auction, including the legal process and the financial steps that involve. So if we deal with the first point first, the different types of property auctions, and how they work. And again, before maybe Jay goes into that, let's ask the audience: how many people here on this webinar have ever purchased a property at an auction before? No, brilliant, 100% so far. Oh, here we go. The poll's moving. Roughly
Mhm.
half and half. Half of bought and half haven't. Okay, fantastic.
Interesting.
So that's really interesting. Jay, thoughts about that? There's obviously clearly a lot of lessons that people can learn from today's webinar, which is great.
I think it's one of these things. We put a retreat together last year that obviously you came to, which was a big part of the retreat, having you coming on and talking through the economy, finance, how things are moving, etc. But one of the people that attended that retreat had been trading property, so buying and selling from auction for 30 plus years. Um, and he was one of the people that we thought when we were putting the whole thing together was like, why is this guy coming? Like he was the one big question mark in our minds. It's like, what's he 30 years he's been doing this successfully, 30 years. What is he going to get from this? And then we had a follow-up call afterwards. Goes, yeah, it's changed the way I do pretty much everything.
Wow,
Because like the way you
wow,
start and the way you figure out to do things by process of elimination or what works and what doesn't mean you do what works well for you. It doesn't mean you're doing what works best overall. And that was just brilliant because you just never know who you're going to meet in a room. So for those 30-40% that have bought at auction before on that poll, hopefully you're going to walk away from this webinar with 2 or 3 more little hints and tips that are going to make you a better buyer and or seller at auction. Um, and for everyone who hasn't been through that process, hopefully this is going to be transformative for you.
fantastic. So, what are the different types of property auctions, Piotr?
So obviously there's the the traditional auctions are the number one thing. So they used to be in the ballrooms and hotels and stuff like that. Pretty much nowadays everything is sort of like online, but occasional auctioneers, there's a few that still try to keep things in the room. But that's the kind of type of auction which people bid. They When they win the property, they actually exchange contracts straight away at the fall of the hammer, and then they have to complete usually within around 4 weeks time, and that's the traditional way. And in the last 5 6 years, there's been a massive boom in the modern method of auction, which basically is the sort of hybrid between estate agents and auctions, because when you win the property, all you're doing is you're exchanging contracts. You're kind of getting like an option to purchase the property, and you pay the deposit, not the deposit, the reservation fee, which is about £6,000 or 4.5% plus 4.5% including VAT of the property price. That doesn't count towards the purchase price. So you just sort of committing to reserve the property, and then you work out your finance, your mortgage sometimes, and you end up buying the property usually within 56 days or so. And it's quite a high fee. But what this enables people to do is actually get mortgages and sort of more long-term finance during that process. Um, and there's obviously nowadays lots of online auctions. People can bid from wherever they are in the world. We had some people in our auction buyers club who literally were bidding from the beach, then coming
Wow.
back coming back to the snorkeling after winning the property. So these days, you can bid from wherever you want in the world, which is actually it opened up for auctioneers. It opened up a massive avenue to sell to more people because people feel much more comfortable sitting in wherever they are, clicking on their computer instead of coming to an intimidating ballroom and fighting with people that they've never met, and everything is tense. And when you sit in front of a computer, everything looks different. And there's there's been way more bidders on properties, and also people were actually much more comfortable with the auction process nowadays.
That's amazing. So, Jay, I guess COVID's been a real enabler for the auction world.
Oh, massively. I mean, there were quite a few things that happened during COVID for auctions to really thrive. And the first one, like counterintuitively, was the fact that no auctioneer was doing a big in-room auction, 500 to 700 people turning up to bid, a big old cattle market of trying to make deals happen. All of that left, that was gone. And some auctioneers basically had less than 10 days to make arrangements from when the government came out and said, right, no groups of more than 3 or 5 people or whatever it was. And they really had to transform that. And what was really impressive was actually how quickly such an old industry or an old part of the industry transformed itself. It was huge. They've been putting off live streaming their auctions for years, the majority of the traditional people. So that change was huge, and it was in and around the marketplace where a lot of estate agents basically just shut up shop, furloughed everybody, went into silent mode, and that really boosted the number of lots going to auction. There are even some bridging lenders and other types of people that also did the same thing, just didn't know what to make of the environment and just closed doors to avoid unnecessary risk or what they couldn't really quantify. And what it's done to the industry is huge. There was a whole group of investors that just the thought of going into an auction room and not knowing, who they were bidding against or what the auctioneer was doing or all of these different things. The level of the playing field now is so balanced in favor of everybody being online now. It's one of the things COVID, an unintended positive consequence of it, that it's actually massively improved the industry, which still has miles to go in terms of improvement. And you could talk to auctioneers around a campfire and they'll tell you all the things they think need to be improved as well. But the unintended positive consequences have been so good for the industry.
I remember at the time we had a decision to make as to what we did with our business in April 2020. And I
Yeah.
remember when the market was going to open on the 18th of May 2020, the property market, because that was when everything is around when land registry is open or closed. And land registry was going to open on the 18th of May 2020 after it shut, I think, on the 31st of March. And when we had a decision to make as to what we do with the business because no one knew which way it was going to go. And I remember the decisions that we made and why we made certain decisions. If we think back, base rate was 0.1%. There was furlough. There was help to buy. There was a stamp duty holiday. People had nothing to spend their money on because so much of the world was shut. So therefore, it was a natural thing that people went to spend money on either their existing properties or look to move and acquire more property. So, it was one of those things where there was a real opportunity, and we really have scaled our business. Maybe we've 8x our business since COVID because like the auction houses, we saw the opportunity, and I think it's having foresight to understand how different material events can impact on your business, which is what drives those successful people. I think that in times of volatility creates opportunity, and the people that do well are the people that can take advantage of those volatile environments and really just take hold of those opportunities. And auctions are a great environment that when times are more volatile, that you can really buy well. Because it creates better buying opportunities. I think, as Warren Buffett used to say, be fearful when others are greedy, and be greedy when others are fearful. And property, I guess, is no different from any other business, which is that if you buy well, you can sell well. And I guess the auction environment is ideally suited to that, Piotr.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's lots of opportunities, especially like with certain problem properties or properties that, I mean, auctions are basically a place where people are very motivated to sell. They need to
Mm.
sell, like they need to sell for next month, 2 months, and that creates a massive opportunity, obviously, if people are picking up the right properties.
Brilliant. So we've dealt with the traditional ballroom auctions. We've spoken about the modern method of auctions. There's a hybrid version as well, isn't there? I think.
Um,
So,
so,
so yeah, sorry, go ahead, Piotr. Sorry, I was just
uh,
jumping in.
Yeah, in a sense, those online and hybrid auctions, they're exactly like the traditional ballroom auctions as well. Even the auctioneers who hold ballroom auctions right now, they don't really have that many people actually bidding in the room. They actually bid through the phones, through the online platform anyway, and it all shows up on the auctioneer's screen. I think those auctioneers still hold ballroom auctions just because of the networking factor that everyone is craving, and that's really kind of the main reason for that. Apart from that, obviously, the online and hybrid auctions, which basically they're like the two types of traditional auctions nowadays. There's one where there's an auctioneer on the screen and they still conduct the bidding, even though people bid online and they do everything else, but the auction's happening on the spot. And then there are those eBay style auctions, which basically have like a half an hour window or 2 hour window or sometimes 2 days window, and people can put their bids like on eBay. But in terms of the actual regular, the terms and conditions, they are very much the same. You exchange contracts straight away. It's almost the same world as opposed to modern method of auction, which is a completely different world.
And there's lots of auction houses. Do different auction houses specialise in different types of properties or different geographical regions? How does that tend to work, Jay?
So yes, yeah, there's over 360 auctioneers operating in the country. The majority of those are small regional estate agents that offer an auction service, and they probably only run a bespoke auction every 3, 4, 5 months with two or three properties in it, and it's just a service that they provide so that they can have that as a unique point of difference from other estate agents in the area. But the the bigger ones, maybe there are 60, 70 large auctioneers, and those basically represent some of the biggest estate agency groups in the country. You have Barnard Marcus, which is the Sequence Property Group. You have LSL, and you have a Countrywide Property Group, but they use three or four different auctions to sell their stock. Um, there are asset-specific auctioneers. You have Allsop Commercial, and you have Acuitas, which only really deal with commercial or primarily commercial heavy stock. So maybe a couple of large shops with two or three smaller flats above. We're in the process of advising a new auction. We're bringing a new auction to market, which is an HMO specific auction. So it'll be only selling properties that are either operating HMOs, have HMO licenses, or are suitable to be HMOs.
That's really
And
interesting.
that's a you know being involved in that for us is super interesting. But I think it's a fantastic idea, having that as a unique kind of selling point, that the sheer focus of that environment is HMOs. And then basically you have what the main two differences to the rest of the auctions are: national auctioneers and local specialist regional auctioneers. Um, and your national auctioneers are like the, you know, Savills, Allsops, Barnard Marcus, you know, SDL types that are based out of London. Not all national auctioneers are London based. And then you'll have regional auction specialists, you know, Hollis Morgan for Bristol, say, or Mags and Allen for Bristol, and then there's you know, several others regionally that are still very impressive. Um, and it's part of our business. Our day to day is we understand from our client's perspective what asset they have, what investment value that asset has, and where the people are going to be looking most for that asset. So we know where to put it with which auctioneer, how to market it best, how to get their legal pack squared off really nicely to make people comfortable to bid, knowing how to identify the best auction for your property. And we're
Mm.
friendly with the majority of these auctioneers, and some we don't know, so we can't say we're friendly with. But for every auctioneer that we know that we're engaged with, we're friendly with, they come to, they're at least invited to an event with us every quarter. They come and have a drink, they talk, we talk about how to make the industry better, and people walk away hopefully with that in mind. And it's a really cool environment, auctions. I think it 20, 30 years ago it was a bit of a gentleman's club kind of environment where you had to be in the environment to be a part of it. But it's really opened itself up a lot. That kind of transparency and unfetteredness to it is something that every auctioneer seems to be taking very seriously right now, which is fantastic.
That's fantastic. And so that kind of, brings on very nicely to what due diligence you should be doing and research before you go into the auction and place a bid.
There's one thing I'll let Piotr take over most of this because Piotr's our in-house due diligence expert. He's in the Inspector Gadget of the Hammered team. But I'd say a story. I was buying a property. It was 2014 or 2015, something like that, and it was a three-bedroom terrace house in Leavesden, and which is just outside of Watford. And it hadn't sold three or four times at the auction. It got to a price where I thought you could buy a three-bedroom flat for, you know, you'd get more as a flat than you would for the house. So I thought on that investment metric it has to be good. And I bought it, and there was nothing really wrong with it, and I tried to get some finance, and it just turned out it was on like a red flag list for whatever reason, and no one was really giving me an answer. And I thought I just started doing more and more due diligence, and then I just did something that I hadn't really done before, which I googled the full address of the property, and a news article came up about an honor killing, or an unaliving. I don't know what's appropriate to be called. That took place
A
in,
live
in
thing.
an unaliving,
Yeah.
that took place in the bathroom of the house, but it wasn't
Mm,
disclosed. The auctioneer didn't disclose it. The person who was selling it through the auction was a trader. They
yeah,
had no idea that had taken place. So the auctioneer wasn't to blame. The person selling it through the auction wasn't to blame. But the person who had sold it to the trader most certainly was to blame because they were aware that this had happened. So um, it became, what was it called, a rogue transaction. My transaction was unraveled, the trader's transaction was unraveled, and then the person who basically put all of that together and essentially defrauded or misrepresented the asset to everybody down the line got stung for quite a bit. But so I always say the first thing you do is just type in the full address into Google and just see what the first couple of pages say. Because if it's not specifically that property, maybe it's within the courtesy of a grade 2 listing, maybe there's a tree preservation order or an asset of community value. Could be anything. Maybe it just comes up with an old report about a mine that runs through the back garden. Whatever it is, um, and it's the cheapest, easiest piece of due diligence you can do. But I'll let Piotr talk about all the fun stuff that he does when he's doing the due diligence.
Yeah, that's definitely googling the property is like the super simplest thing. Obviously, when you're looking at the auction property and you're thinking of making an offer, it's like number one thing, it's reviewing a legal pack. Um, Probably starting with special conditions of sale. because that's where all the fun stuff is basically. All the extra fees might be, all the things that are very special. So you may know that the general things about auctions, but then every property will have that special conditions document that apply only to this property, and you can have extra fees there. You can have 14-day completion there instead of, for example, 20 days, 28 days completion. So there's lots of things there, and reading special conditions document, even just if you're not planning on bidding the property, just to understand what you're looking at is super important. And then obviously reviewing the rest of the legal pack, the title documents, trying. It's very important. Number one thing is what your goal with the property is. If you're planning to turn the property into an HMO, there'll be different things you're looking for in the legal pack than if you're trying to, I don't know, finish and have done development, or basically buying a site which you're planning to do basically some sort of conversion or some sort of new build. So that the due diligence is always driven by what your goal is with the property, and um, that's basically, those are the most important things. And before I would spend money on solicitors, I would always just review things myself, just to understand if there are any potential red flags. Because basically, when you're reviewing a legal pack, you are most interested in things that would stop you from buying this property. If there are things that are just complete non-negotiable for you or completely break the deal, why spend money on solicitors on other things? Like, you can find out those things most likely yourself, and only if you don't see any massive red flags, you then employ a solicitor, pay them a fee, and get them to review the legal pack. That's basically kind of my best advice for doing due diligence. And obviously things such as knowing what the end value of the property is, like, key thing. Like, that's what kind of we start with when we're reviewing a property. What is it gonna be worth at the end? How much is it gonna cost to get there? What's our profit? And then we end up with our maximum bid.
I mean, we rely quite heavily on platforms like Essential Information Group, which is kind of, they hold a lot of data for auctions and have done for 30 plus years. So when we're doing our due diligence, one of the things we like to see is, has this property been to auction before? Have any properties on that road been to auction before? And we use that to kind of gauge our levels. We use property data for like real life kind of due diligence and real time. And then we'll do what essentially every investor should be doing, going on Rightmove, seeing what's been on the site, sitting on the site for a long time, what's renting well, what's not renting well. And then we have to start getting comfortable with setting a maximum bid price, and we do that in a very specific way. I know most people will start with, my maximum bid is going to be 285, right, or whatever the number is. We do something. The reason why we don't do that is because you put a lot of pressure on that single point of failure. If it sells for over 285, you're now putting yourself under pressure to keep bidding. So we come up with a slightly different process. We have a green price, an amber price, and a red price. So we'll go, right, ideally, let's see if we can pick this up for 250. If it goes over 250, then 265 is probably where we're still going to make money. It's a little bit tight, but it still works. And maybe 280, 285 is like, this is this is our maximum price, a penny over this, and it's just not going to work for us. And then by
Guys,
spreading out that bidding. Oh, sorry,
guys,
go on.
sorry, sorry. You might have seen my wife come into my room a second ago. I've got something that I have to deal with. I have to deal with now. Could you two please carry on, and I'll be back in 1 minute.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure,
sure.
absolutely. Yeah,
Apologies.
yeah.
It's a family I've got to deal with. But bear with me, please.
Problem.
No problem. No, family first, like life. Things that's these things are important. Um, so yeah, it's about not creating single points of failure or putting too much pressure on a certain price point. You need to, the job of the auctioneer, if you're in like a live stream environment, is to kind of get you to forget about that price. It's to get you into a competitive mindset. That's them doing a good job for their seller. But what you need to do is you just need to make sure that when they're saying, "Oh, don't let them get away with it, just another £500 and it could be yours," you need to just make sure that you're not putting undue, unnecessary pressure on yourself in that environment. Um, and some people struggle with, going up against the auctioneer, or just a ticking time clock on that bidding widget, like an eBay window. Sometimes it's harder to, you can almost argue in your head with what the auctioneer is saying. Maybe the auctioneer's put you off, or maybe the auctioneer is creating too much. You never really know what to do, but there is a consistent metric, which is the time is running out on that bidding window, right? So you just have to be really comfortable with the fact that you've done your due diligence properly, you have your numbers right. Um, and I think the other point that's in here is having your finance in place. A lot of people, Piotr mentioned early on about having the legal pack reviewed by a solicitor. There are some shocking statistics out there that 30% of winning bidders haven't even downloaded the legal pack. And I would say probably double that haven't even spoken to a broker or a lender to sort out their finance. It's something that someone does the moment they win the property, right? And look, bridging is fast, Roma is great, and they can get you through. They can make sure that you get your finance in time, but why would you take that risk? Approach them beforehand, get a decision in principle, get an idea as to how much lending you can get on the asset, gives you an idea as to how you can temper your bidding, right? It kind of frames the whole thing nicely for you. But making sure that you reach out to, we do a lot of work with Samantha, and we see Claudine everywhere. And these are very easily approachable people to say, I'm looking to buy this property at auction. Can you, get me an idea on value or decision in principle? And making sure that you have people like that you can go to in advance is just so valuable. Um, but yeah, making sure that you get the finance, or you're speaking to somebody beforehand, so important. In the same way, you want to kind of be reaching out to your insurance broker to go, because the moment you exchange contracts, you're now liable for that asset in insurance terms. So if you're not addressing that early on, then it's problematic. But Scott's back, so he can be far more leading us in the right direction in finance. I was just saying, we kind of, we deal with Sam and Michael, and we see Claudine at a lot of events, and Sonia, and just saying, like, if you are going to be buying something at auction, it's fantastic. Yeah, call up Roma when you've won the property, but probably better to let them know in advance, right?
You know,
Because
I
bridging
always
is
say,
quick.
yeah, I always say the seven P's, and it was a lesson that I learned when I was a lot younger, which is that prior preparation and planning prevents something poor performance, poor performance, and it's absolutely true, and finance is one of those things, and we have a dedicated these 70 people in the business here, and we have a dedicated team specifically to support people that are buying and selling at auction, where if they come to us in advance, we will partner with them. We'll work with them to structure the solution that works for the property that they're looking to bid, or properties are looking to bid on. And we can pre-approve stuff before they go into auction, so they know exactly where how far they can take it, and how far they can bid. And whether we do that with a bridge, or whether we do that with a revolving credit facility on other assets that they own, there's ways in which we can facilitate a quick transaction, which is incredibly important. But if you have been to an auction and you have, bid on a property and you've not got the finance sorted, then don't worry either, because the business is set up here to facilitate a quick transaction. Because of the way in which we've reinvented the legal process, because of the way in which we don't need to rely on a physical valuation of the property, and because of the way in which we can get cases completed, we're here to support you, whatever your circumstances. Obviously, it is better if you've planned it in advance. But yeah, Roma's speciality, and what we're good at, is actually structuring transactions that give people what they want, and enable them to create wealth for themselves and their families. That's the idea. And auctions are a fantastic way to go and do that.
Absolutely, it gives you that speed, and the exchange of contracts is a level of certainty you just don't get anywhere else. So that once that gavel goes down, or that timer runs out, that deal is yours. That puts you in real action to be able to do those things, create those wealth opportunities. Um, it says here,
100%.
like, research the auction property. It said visit the auction before bidding. I mean, you want to be visiting the property with any luck before
Absolutely.
bidding. A lot of auctioneers now, are pushing for floor plans, whereas 10 years ago, it really wasn't something that they were paying attention to. Internal pictures was something that they weren't really fussed about at the time. Video walkthroughs, like a Matterport run through of the property. All of those kind of things are now there, so that if you cannot reach the property physically, at least you have enough data and enough images in front of you to be able to make some sort of a decision. And then you've got a service like Viewber, where you can pay them, I don't know, £35 plus VAT, and they will go and do the viewing for you, and jump on a WhatsApp video call with you, or take pictures, or do a video walkthrough that you feel you can have more trust in. And that's also quite valuable, and that's something that's really come about and blown up because of COVID as well. But watching live stream auctions and just paying attention to the auction market in general, the first auction you look at, and the first property you're interested in, you don't have to buy it. The beauty of the auctions is they're like clockwork. They'll just keep coming. Um, so uh, if you're looking at a specific area, and the main auctioneer that performs well in that area is X, Y, and Z auction, then follow their auctions for 3 months. See what stock they sell well, see what stock they don't sell well, and the stock they don't sell well, if that's the kind of thing you're looking to pick up, then that's where you need to be buying. So it's about creating that kind of market awareness,
Mm.
which is really very important. You don't have to buy the first one that you find. And we always advise people, two things when you're doing due diligence. One, don't be a motivated buyer. Uh, it's unhealthy, right? So number one, don't be a motivated buyer, and number two, you have to be going through the entire process, your due diligence, the legal pack, the viewing, everything, looking for reasons not to buy the property, not looking for things that kind of confirmation bias. Oh, I was hoping for this and that's good. And you want to be going, why shouldn't I be buying this? And then you should be pricing in those reasons why not to buy. And then maybe still buy it, but once you price in those reasons not to buy, you're now buying at a level where you can be confident and certain that you're not going to be making a financial error. Um, and that's how we do it. That's how we do it.
Fantastic. And in terms of bidding techniques, just moving on to the next slide, if we can, bidding techniques and tips, is it worth just touching on some of the things that you guys are aware of when you're looking to bid, or coaching people on how to bid?
I mean, this used to be a really, really big, of the first book that we had written. There was a lot of psychology and a lot of tips on, when you're in the auction room, how do you position yourself, who you're looking out for, what they look like and how they behave may determine what their exit strategy is. If you see someone turning up in, you know, builder's trousers with stains and big like metal, the chances are they're going to be able to do a refurb cheaper than you, right? So you have to kind of gauge your competition by how they present themselves and how they're behaving. You have no idea now. That's all gone. So it now becomes more a game of, how do you bid pre-auction? How do you structure that? Um,
Mm.
do you understand underwriting? Can you underwrite the property? Do you, when the bidding starts, do you start the bidding off, or do you see if other people kick the bidding off? And if you are going to start bidding, do you go up in the same increments that is listed there, or do you start doing jump bids to try and frighten people away from you? Do you put out the airs that you are a motivated bidder, or you're a crazy person that's just going to pay too much for it, and that knocks people out of the race? Potentially, some people will just stay on board and pay attention and fight you to the bitter end anyway. And then the other thing is, how do you approach things post auction? So there's more psychology and more wiggle room pre and post auction than there is actually in the environment. There are some people that pay very close attention to live stream auctions to try and pick up tells from the auctioneers. Are they actually bidding against? Am I bidding against a real person, or is the auctioneer, standing there with their jacket, shirt, and underpants on, just kind of making a bit off a light bulb? Right? It could be anything. So um, a lot of people put a lot of focus on that, but the reality is, you kind of want to remove and restrict as many external influences and conditions as possible and focus very much on what you're looking to achieve. Because the moment you start focusing externally on what the auctioneer is doing or what this person might be doing, you start losing focus and you start losing the kind of like where you need to be and what you need to be achieving. So we always just say, look, just it's you know your numbers, you know your price, you know what you're looking to achieve. You have to be able to walk away. Um, and there's no real strategy for that in bidding anymore, because you can't, you know, it's not just for you to be able to get the auctioneer to drop the bidding increments down. It has to be all the other bidders have to be behaving the same way you are for them to think, right, let's drop it down from £500 bidding increments to £250. Um, and sometimes when they do that bidding increment drop from 500 to 250, if you're able to still bid online, maybe put in £1,000 bid just to kind of disrupt everything. Um, even when we were in the room, one of our key things was saying to people, you have to disrupt the normal flow of activity. You have to kind of keep the auctioneers on their toes. You have to keep the other bidders thinking, what are you going to do next? What does that mean? And whilst you're doing that, you just have to be focusing internally. You want everyone else confused and disorientated about what's going on externally.
Absolutely, I suppose it's managing human behaviour, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, a lot of that, yeah.
Absolutely, and 100%. Piotr, anything you'd like to add to that?
Yes, so I mean, these days it's quite a popular technique for traders to be putting properties at like super low guide prices, and then people obviously get engaged with it, and then they bid, and then they're hoping to get it for like a super low amount. But I think it's really important to check EIG for
Mm,
sale prices, historical sale prices, because the likelihood of you getting a property that's worth 300k for 100k is very little, especially if you see that there were similar sales happening at 250, 275. So it's sort of like having a bit of a reality check about what's possible, and obviously still registering to bid, but having that kind of range of what might be possible, what might happen based on historical data is really important. You don't want to, like Jay said, be a motivated buyer and be overly invested in a property. I think there's always the next deal, even if you miss out on a property, no matter how much it's painful and hurtful. There's the next deal happening next week, or even the same week, and maybe even
absolutely.
post auction. Like literally, there's an abundance of deals happening, and sometimes those deals they don't just happen. You need to like create them, but they're there, and activity creates more activity and actually creates opportunities as well. So being active, bidding in the auctions is important, and winning the property happens when it happens.
Absolutely. And in terms of what happens after the auction, what can people expect after the auction?
Well, it depends if
So
they're following your 7Ps or not, Scott. If they've prepared and they've reached out and they've done everything, they're going to be very relaxed. They're going to be in control of things. They're going to be calm. Obviously, you can't drop the ball. You still have to do a lot of things, but they should be in a far better place if they took your advice. But
Yeah, in terms of obviously the post-auction process.
yeah,
Uh,
so like basically, if someone wins the property, the post auction process is quite. I mean, obviously, you've got 20 days to complete, but you will receive the memorandum of sales from the auctioneers. Um, Different auctioneers have different processes of how they deal with
mm,
deposits, but usually within 24 hours, you need to pay the 10% deposit and need to send them a bank transfer to the auctioneers and make sure it's like you're around to do that and you've got everything you need to send bank transfers basically, even if you're abroad on the beach and you're snorkeling. So that's the deposits are one thing. Then obviously being in touch with your solicitor to start the legal process is super important. Every day counts when it's you've got a tight completion. So getting bridging valuations done, obviously working with solicitor about what might still be needed for the bridging and for the finance to go through. That's super important. Like you said, these days many valuations can be done online and on a desktop, but sometimes, especially with commercial property, it takes much longer to get surveyors in, and also for the surveyors to produce reports, it's also not as simple as producing a report for a house. So allowing some time for those survey reports for commercial properties is really important. For residential, it's probably much simpler, but still you need to allow time. You need to allow time for booking that surveyor, for them to come out, for them to produce a report. It's quite a tight process and needs to be managed very well. Um, and yeah, and I think the rest of the stuff, it's really the solicitor driven process. So they will almost tell you what needs to be done, but it's important to stay on top of your solicitor. They're not 100% responsible for everything. You're 100% responsible for everything, and you need to project manage this process. So we do kind of keep our solicitors on their toes because it's important.
Fantastic. Guys, I suppose thinking of the people that are on this webinar now, how many of those would feel more confident in buying a property at auction after having listened to both Jay and Piotr present? Let's run another poll.
Hopefully, someone.
There we go. The poll, the webinar has been a success. Only one, I think, only a few people would be less confident or no more confident, which is great. So I think that's a result from today. So I guess the key takeaways are number one, the 7Ps. Do your research on the property before you go and buy, before you go and bid. Look at the street, look at what's taken place before. Put the address into Google. Do your research. Do your research into the area. Do your research into the property. Do your research into the history. Um, Understand where your money is going to come from, and obviously Roma is here to support you on those transactions. Educate yourself, and obviously Piotr and Jay run a most fantastic organisation that coaches people and trains people on how to buy and trade at auctions. Find out what type of auction, the 3 different methods that suit you best, and always have a cut-off price. I suppose it's a little bit like being in a casino, in that you can,
Mm.
sometimes you can spend a lot more than you would anticipate you're going to spend. So have a fixed budget as to what you're going to go up to when you're bidding on a particular property. And if you need some further help, guys, Piotr and Jay, you guys are here to help and coach people through, and you run training courses to help people do that, which is fantastic. Roma is here as well with our specialist team to support people on the finance. Buy Jay and Piotr's book, Before the Hammer Falls, that covers an awful lot of ground. And I've got a copy myself, and I know how valuable that book is. So in terms of the next webinar, so thank you for those people that have been today. In terms of our next webinar, Roma's next webinar is how to build your perfect power team. The power team is the people that are involved in transacting with you, whether it is buying, whether it is developing, whether it's refurbishing, whether it's letting, how to build your perfect power team within property. And we're running that webinar on Wednesday, the 23rd of July at 1:30 in the afternoon. Please do join us. I will be joined by Mani Chopra from Property Titans, who's one of the titans of the industry herself, and a very successful property entrepreneur. And feel free always to contact us at Roma Finance. Our contact details are on the last slide. Um, uh, and we look forward to hearing from you. And obviously, Jay and Piotr, in terms of your contact details, how do people get in touch with you guys to learn more?
So best to reach us through our website, hammeredauctions.co.uk, and people can submit the valuation request for the properties they want to sell. They can call us, and everything's on our website. It's quite a comprehensive page.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody, very much indeed. And we look forward to supporting you with your next auction trades, your next auction purchases. And we look forward to working with you as well. Many thanks indeed for your time today, and have a
Thank
enjoy the weather. Have a great afternoon. Bye for now.
you, everyone.